stop what you're doing. There's been a suicide-borne IED attack in RC West. Okay, we are the nearest medical facility that can take casualties.
Tonight, doctors and nurses from the NHS continue their tour of duty in Afghanistan.
And a 10mm syringe ready to go for each and every bay.
Caught in the horrors of war.
You can feel that nervous energy beginning to build up now.
Saving lives against the odds.
This is going to hurt.
Treating the Taliban.
He's a fighter. He's fighting.
Yeah.
Risking all on the front line.
This is the first time I've been anywhere which could be on the edge of my comfort zone.
In southern Afghanistan, the British Army is confronting the Taliban, intent on taking them on face to face and putting an end to an increasing number of suicide bomb attacks which have been killing and maiming British soldiers. The men know they will take casualties. When they come, doctors like Mark Reevely will be with them on the front line. He's one of a number of British doctors who put their lives on the line to try and save soldiers wounded on the battlefield, taking treatment to the casualty rather than waiting for the injured to get to them.
One of the biggest avoidable killers is bleeding to death out of an arm or a leg. Now, some people, when they get injured, they're going to die anyway. It doesn't matter what you do. If a bullet goes through your head, if it goes through the centre of your chest, the chances you're going to die. We know that in Vietnam, 9% of the guys who died from bleeding out of an arm or a leg, and that should be reversible. Yeah, we should be able to stop those guys dying.
Dr. Reevely has never experienced war before. He's a volunteer, a member of the Territorial Army, an anaesthetist with the NHS in London.
I think of it like as an itch you want to scratch. I still need a bit more danger, a bit more excitement. And I think the same applies to a lot of guys who do perhaps steady, run-of-the-mill jobs, and this is their chance to get out there and have some excitement. I'm going to go back into the NHS. I'm sure I'll be more confident. I'll have seen more trauma than nearly anyone I've worked with, you know, and I'll be a lot better doctor for that.
2,500 miles from home, Dr. Reevely is just starting to realise the danger he's put himself in.
We're heading into unknown territory and going into areas where there might be IEDs, which is why I've got everything on.
Every time Reevely's vehicle stops, they face danger. And not always from Taliban fighters. It looks like the group needs medical help, but Dr. Reevely doesn't take chances.
Just walk behind the wagon and make ready.
They may have to shoot first and ask questions later.
Cav and I, well, I'm a bit neurotic. There's known female suicide bombers around, and one of the great ways of killing yourself and a few UK forces would be to present yourself with a medical problem. So that's why Cav and I just slipped round the back of the wagon and made our weapons ready.
The group is getting too close for comfort. Reevely's Afghan interpreter is first in the firing line.
We've got medical rules of engagement, and we'll look after anybody who's hurt in fighting, or either we hurt or they hurt or has been hurt by legacy mines, for example. This is nothing to do with us. However, she's come out, we're here, and as a little bit of goodwill, I'm quite willing to look at her foot.
But extreme caution is still the order of the day. There have been 19 suicide bomb attacks in the last 6 months in Afghanistan.
Within 30 seconds it became apparent that wasn't what they're up to. As an old woman, her entire family all stood around. looking at her foot. But who knows? You know, one day that could happen. That'll be their scheme, to draw us in, get a group of medics all stood around someone, and then it's Allah Akbar.
Stop what you're doing. There's been a suicide-borne IED attack in RC West. Okay, we are the nearest medical facility that can take casualties. There's 15 plus dead at scene, including up to 12 to 15 wounded. Apart from that, I've got no further information.
This is the British military hospital at Camp Bastion, 65 kilometres from the front line. 100 British doctors and nurses work here, but less than half are on duty today.
Chopper team to the emergency department. Chopper team to the emergency department.
That means all hands on deck.
So that's a 20ml syringe with 200 milligrams of ketamine and a 10ml syringe with 10 milligrams of morphine, ready to go for each and every bay, okay? So we crack on and do that now. Make sure they're all labelled up, all right?
Dr. Pete Davis normally works with the air ambulance and medical emergency response team. Today, he's coordinating on the ground.
We're paid to wear uniform, we're soldiers as well as doctors. We have a duty to do the very best that we can for our injured colleagues. If what we do medically can make a difference, then I think we're obliged to make a difference.
The ER can only take 6 casualties at a time. Any more and it could be overwhelmed, especially if they're bomb blast victims. Dr. Hugo Guthrie is one of 2 trauma surgeons on duty.
But we don't know how many we'll get.
Guthrie is the rookie full-time army doctor who wants eventually to become a top consultant.
And we've got 2 operating tables. There'll be some hard decisions made. If we get 7 people, we'll be thinking about who we can save.
Any information?
No, that's it.
If we get what they say we might get, this is well beyond everybody's comfort zone. You can feel a little bit of anxiety in the air, and you can feel that nervous energy beginning to build up now.
As the doctors and nurses at Bastion face an uncertain future, medics on the front line are also under pressure.
This is the first time I've been anywhere which could be on the edge of my comfort zone.
Trying to save the lives of soldiers.
That's it. Potentially fatal poor temperature.
And civilians.
I'm sorry, it is not a comfortable procedure, but it's necessary.
At Camp Bastion in southern Afghanistan, the doctors and nurses in Britain's military hospital are still preparing to receive up to 7 civilian casualties from a suicide bomb attack. Bastion is the largest overseas British military compound built since World War II, home to 6,000 troops. At its heart is a state-of-the-art £10 million trauma hospital with 2 operating theatres and an emergency room which can take up to 6 patients at a time. 3/4 of hospital staff aren't members of the armed forces. They're NHS doctors and nurses who have volunteered to be here. Justin Woolgar is an NHS volunteer, a territorial army major in a war zone for the first time.
We'll get up for this?
I think so.
Mr. Woolgar is 43, a vascular surgeon from Wales.
Right, let's go then. Mr. Probert.
Bastion is a far cry from his day job in the Swansea Hospital.
Right, Mr. Probert. It's nice to sort of have a break from your usual routine NHS work. I think that's quite important because you can go a bit stir crazy doing the same job all the time. And it's refreshing. You go to somewhere totally different, work in a totally different environment.
Justin Woolgar has never experienced anything like this before. It doesn't frighten him. It thrills him.
Any form of emergency surgery, really, I quite enjoy it. You know, I think it's just the thrill of getting sick patients and being able to operate on these really sick patients who otherwise would probably die if you don't do anything. No, trauma junkie.
The code red isn't as bad as expected. Instead of 7 casualties, the helicopter has brought only 3, all with serious blast injuries, but Surgeon Woolgar won't get his hands on them yet.
When they initially come in, you know, you basically have to stand back and let the A&E guys do the first assessment. Then you've got to start thinking in your mind, how you're going to tackle it. You're never quite sure what you're going to be dealing with, and I think that's the thing that sort of gives you a bit of an adrenaline buzz.
Blood pressure 114/46.
Bloods have all gone down and we've cross-matched for 4 units.
All 3 patients are critical, but there are only 2 operating theatres. It's Dr. Woolgar's job to decide who gets surgery first.
This is often the dilemma you have, is which patient goes first. With trauma surgeries, you have to sort of decide, what's the most immediate life-threatening problem and whereabouts it is and how you're going to tackle it. Often with these patients, when they come in, they're so unstable, there's no time for sort of sophisticated imaging like CT scanning or anything like that.
Going off to sleep very shortly. Start, guys, when you're ready, okay? ATS when you're ready.
Woolgar's first patient is suffering from heavy bleeding. The surgeons know they are going to have to amputate limbs if lives are to be saved. On the front line, Dr. Reevely is also dealing with limbs. His foot clinic is taking longer than expected. The scar is from a previous operation and not the war, but he's determined to help.
So it looks like it's healing nicely. It's a good idea, some magic cream. Let's see if we can just give it a little bit of foot powder.
She needs to rub it in. And if she does that 3 times a day.
She had some scar tissue which was stiff, which was sore. If she was seen in NHS, we'd have done something similar. The Afghan people think of the British Army almost as magicians. We can drop a bomb, a 500-pound bomb, within 2 metres of wherever we want it, whenever we want it. And they think we can do the same stuff with our medical resources. She wanted us to magic her foot better. What else can we give them but foot powder? There's nothing else we can do for them.
In the hospital, Dr. Woolgar and his team are also doing their best, but many have lost limbs, leaving the volunteer nurses to deal with the consequences. Claire McIntyre is an NHS nurse from Leeds, given time off work to spend 2 months in Afghanistan. Her patient is Z, a teenager. His right leg has been amputated.
I looked after a lot of amputations in England, and I just admire a lot of the people that have these amputations because their recovery, the way they deal with it, absolutely amazes me.
The Afghanistan patients are really traumatised by limb loss. Really, really traumatised. They wake up and, they say, oh, I didn't want to lose my limb. And it's quite difficult to try and explain to them that they wouldn't be alive unless we took their leg or their limb off.
Z isn't happy. Not only has he lost his leg, but he's being told he must move to a local civilian hospital. Bastion is about life-saving trauma surgery, not long-term care. Nurse McIntyre cannot change the rules. Z has to go. Today.
Our job really is to make sure that they're stable, the operation's done, and then move them on to the appropriate hospital.
For Britain's soldiers, life on the front line is full of hidden dangers, not all of them involving the Taliban. It's 4 in the afternoon, 40 degrees centigrade in the shade. One of the biggest killers in this war zone is the heat.
When did he go unconscious? When did he collapse?
Yes, fella. Can you hear me? 30 minutes ago.
30 minutes ago. Okay, let's get monitoring.
The soldier isn't British. He's an Afghan volunteer who's become dehydrated. He's lucky. A highly experienced British Army doctor is on frontline duties. Dr. Akbar Lilani, a full-time Army captain from London, is on his first tour of Afghanistan.
Hello? Can you open your eyes for me? Open your eyes.
House 138.
Unknown.
Yeah.
It's really over there.
Have you guys got access?
No, sir.
Access is necessary to force fluids into the soldier. If he doesn't get them quickly, he will die.
Hold it squeezed.
Right, bridge. Oh, all right, mate. I've got one, mate. Let's speak to his own design.
Yes, we're checking them now.
His temperature is way too high.
His core temperature is 39.8. We're just trying to cool him down because that's a potentially fatal core temperature. Temperature is 39.8.
Dr. Leilani hasn't got long to save his patient. A few kilometers away, Dr. Reevely and his medical team are also being stretched, hunting the Taliban. That means the NHS volunteers sworn to save lives must now shoot to kill, if need be.
Everyone takes a turn on the sentry, everyone takes a turn on the machine gun, and you know, one of those times it's going to be you on the machine gun putting the rounds down the other way. And my military skills are probably not quite as proficient as my medical skills. So I'm slightly reluctant to shoot people or shoot at people. And ironically enough, I thought the worst thing that could happen would be the kind of situations which the docs often end up in. You end up near a compound, say a compound like one over there, and some fire comes in from it, everyone lies down and just fires in that general direction. See, when you do that, you don't know what effect you're having. You don't know. You could go away and then a year, 2 years later think, well, perhaps I actually, perhaps I killed someone that day. You don't know. This is the first time I've been anywhere which could be on the edge of my comfort zone, with bullets and explosions whistling around my ears. And when you see the women and children clear off, they're the first people to know that something's about to kick off.
In his frontline first aid post, Dr. Leilani isn't worried about the Taliban. He's still trying to get fluids into his desperately dehydrated patient. If he is to save the soldier, Leilani has only one option left.
This is going to hurt, but I need him to stay very still.
Plunge a hollow needle directly into his chest bone and get fluids in that way. Now, Leilani's team can get liquids into the man.
Okay, that's it.
It's okay, mate. It's okay.
Oxygen. Ready on left.
It doesn't take long for his temperature to start coming down.
1, 2, 3, left.
60 kilometers away, there's another emergency. A landmine is detonated, catching more innocent civilians in its blast. An RAF Chinook, the military air ambulance, has been scrambled. The doctors and medics at another first aid post on the front line have been put on full alert. The helicopter is heading their way.
Right, listen in, folks, shut up.
We're now going to break you down into stretcher teams. People in the main treatment room, step forward this way. Can you now break them down into stretcher 1 and 2?
Dr. Carrick Richards is handling this one. He's full-time Army. A major. But when he's not at war, he's the equivalent of an NHS GP at an Army unit in Kent, responsible for a battalion of soldiers.
I'm the GP for an infantry battalion. I have 600 blokes, most of them fit as the proverbial butcher's dog, and my job is to keep them that way, to go with them when they go on exercise or overseas, to make sure that all the various checkups they need, vaccinations, happen. So I'm a little bit of an occupational health as well as a GP, as well as the trauma backup. The aircraft is in the air and inbound, and it's got 4 stretcher cases on board, and 3 of them sound as if they're fairly serious with chest injuries.
The worst off are related. A young boy and his grandfather. Both critically ill. Both with suspected chest injuries. The boy is the most serious.
Scissors forceps, artery forceps. Those big blue tin-foil trays. Open them up and pull out the biggest pair of pliers you can. The little boy only had one side of the chest wall moving. was fairly obvious that he had a collapsed lung. The collapsed lung means that you can't breathe in to that lung, and it's quite dangerous. It can very quickly stop you breathing altogether.
Can you explain to this little child, I'm going to make his breathing easier, okay, but it will mean a little hole in his chest.
Drastic action is required. Major Richards, the GP, must now become Dr. Richards, the surgeon.
Can you ask him, is he breathing more easy now? I've got air entry on this side now. That's good news.
But the good news is mixed with bad.
How's your man over there? Is he fitting?
The boy's grandfather has taken a turn for the worse. As the old man's life hangs by a thread, life on the front line is getting tougher. A British soldier's been hurt. And Dr. Davis faces orders he doesn't agree with.
Essentially what I'd be doing is making a decision to switch off his care at that point.
As the Taliban go after the air ambulance. In Helmand Province, southern Afghanistan, British soldiers are still after the Taliban. Joining them on the front line is Dr. Leilani, who swapped his life-saving needle for an automatic rifle.
Guys, just clearing a couple of compounds here. I'm just going to go firm with the equipment. If anything happens, then I'm ready.
Being ready means supporting the paras he's with bullets as well as bandages.
Okay, medic. If you just stay here, act as a link man to the next section coming through, mate.
Leilani's support will not be needed. No sign of the Taliban. Time to reform the convoy and move on. Every soldier knows this is the most dangerous part. The convoy's lead vehicle has struck a landmine. A big blast. But only one casualty and a doctor close enough to give immediate treatment.
Hughes here has sustained a fracture to his right ankle, giving him some morphine, local anaesthetic.
It's been a close call. Down the road, where Major Richards has been trying to save the lives of the young boy and his grandfather caught in the earlier landmine explosion, the situation is far more serious.
Write it on the bag, please.
The grandfather is still fitting, and Dr. Richards is desperately trying to find out why.
The old man, he'd had this fit and wasn't able to get oxygen into the blood supply. That was a clear sign that something fairly dramatic was going on.
Richards thinks the old man could also have a collapsed lung, but he can't be sure.
Pumping oxygen in as best we could, and it was very hard to be sure which side it was, so I was in a bit of a fix. You have a breathing problem, you fix something to make breathing easier.
Can you explain then? I'm just about to make a small cut. I'll push a tube into his chest and his breathing should be easier.
The solution I chose was to put a chest drain in, even though I wasn't sure that he'd got a collapsed lung.
I'm sorry, this should be over soon. I'm sorry, it is not a comfortable procedure, but it's necessary.
Quite an awkward thing to do, stick a 2 centimetre wide tube into your chest.
We need pulse? All right, there it is, 68.
The emergency surgery has done the trick. Which means the man and his grandson can be handed over to a local civilian hospital. For the doctors and nurses who work on the front line, there's always another patient.
35 knots fast.
This time, the Chinook with its medical emergency response team is being sent deep into enemy territory.
try and take a slightly different route.
Soldiers are reported down, wounded and under heavy fire.
They didn't give any indication of how many casualties. One's there already, so...
Leading the response team is Dr. Pete Davis, the full-time Army doctor who specialises in emergency trauma injuries. He and his team are often in the firing line, risking their lives to treat patients in the thick of the battle. These airborne doctors do something no one else does. They fly to the casualty rather than wait for the casualty to come to them. They're not only an air ambulance, they're a flying ER.
We take the emergency room to the patient. We provide the first 30 minutes or so of what we call aggressive resuscitation, and we can actually do that. We can perform that in the back of the helicopter. The crew will then do their damnedest to fly away as fast as possible, and we're in the back working on the patients. That's something which I think is largely unheard of.
Lieutenant Colonel Davis is one of the most experienced trauma doctors on the front line. He's already battle-hardened with 2 tours of Afghanistan and 2 in Iraq under his belt. But the 45-year-old father of 3 has a second job. When he isn't on duty in a war zone, he's on loan to the NHS in Scotland as a trauma doctor in a Glasgow emergency department.
And some inotropes, and at least we could set up the noradrenaline infusion in the first place.
His UK NHS work isn't without its share of drama or danger. Just like Dr. Davis's work in Afghanistan, it often involves helicopters, working with the Scottish Air Ambulance and rescue services. In Afghanistan, it's bullets and bombs. In Scotland, it's mountaineering accidents and car crashes. But Dr. Davis has a secret.
I'm not a big fan of flying. I don't particularly enjoy it, and I certainly don't do this job for the thrills and spills of flying around in helicopters. They're noisy, there are lots of mechanical parts that can go wrong, and they're reliant on humans to fly them. I just don't feel particularly easy around. But it is a means to an end. The helicopter is probably, both in the civilian world and in the military world, the best and most efficient way to deliver an expert medical team to where it needs to work.
That expert medical team is needed right now in the heart of Taliban territory.
My nearest threat is right, 3 o'clock. Dan, can you get the on the red now? Get rid of the smoke.
As the Chinook comes into land, the crew release flares to confuse any heat-seeking missiles they know the Taliban have trained on them. They have no idea what they're flying into or who they'll be picking up. All they know is there's been a firefight and the Taliban are everywhere.
For something I couldn't see to be on the grid. I would rather not hold at this place. Call me on pressure.
And this is a surprise. Only 1 casualty. Not a British soldier. The reports were wrong. An 11-year-old boy caught in the battle in a coma.
When he came on board, he clearly was very deeply in coma. Because of that, he wasn't breathing effectively. I decided at that point that I needed to take over the breathing function for this patient in order to try and normalise his system. If that situation had been allowed to progress for perhaps another 10 or 15 minutes or half an hour, his brain would have been deprived of oxygen. At worst, it may well have killed him.
The helicopter crew have orders to take the boy to a local Afghan hospital. But Dr. Davis knows that if they do, he will surely die. His wounds are too severe for local Afghan doctors to treat.
We'd started intensive care in the back of a helicopter, essentially, for this child. It seemed morally wrong for us to have started that level of care and for them to take him to a facility that really couldn't continue that. It's not their fault, but they're just not set up for it. Essentially, what I'd be doing is making a decision to switch off his care at that point.
Lieutenant Colonel Davis has just seconds to decide. Obey the order and let the boy die, or pull rank and make the crew fly him to Camp Bastion and its life-saving ER. The orders are changed by Dr. Davis. At Bastion, another patient has just arrived. Private Hughes, the soldier who had a close call with a landmine, who's being checked out to see if Dr. Leilani's battlefield diagnosis of a fractured ankle is correct. Simon Lawrence, the NHS radiographer from Wales, who works with terminally ill cancer patients, is on the case, complete with portable X-ray machine which gives instant results.
Okay, what we're going to do is we're just going to take the splint off for a second or two. A complicated structure like the foot, it may not look any different to someone who doesn't know what they're looking at. Sometimes, you know, there may not be an apparent fracture, but if the knee and the ankle aren't in line, then you've got to start suspecting something else is going on. Good, lovely.
Lawrence's X-ray confirms the worst for Hughes. Leilani was right. Hughes' foot is fractured. His war is over. For now. In the ER, Dr. Davis's 11-year-old coma patient is already on the table. Davis's colleagues now hold the boy's life in their hands. The medical emergency response team is being scrambled again. A soldier has been wounded on the front line. Once more, the medics are heading for enemy territory. On the hospital recovery ward, there's a problem. Z, the teenager who had his right leg amputated, has disappeared.
We have a serious problem. Our one-legged gentleman has vanished.
Nurse McIntyre knows he can't have gone far. He was in bed only seconds ago.
You haven't brought the patient then? The gentleman with one leg. You haven't got a one-legged man.
In the ER, Dr. Davis's 11-year-old patient is out of danger. The treatment that only this hospital could offer has worked, leaving him in a stable condition. But Davis is in hot water. The top brass don't like what he did, diverting the helicopter from a civilian hospital to Camp Bastion. His boss, Colonel Hubbard, must now face the senior officers from Medical Command.
Following the toing and froing of decision-making concerning the local national child who was picked up from Delhi, there will be a standing instruction drawn up so that everyone is clear on exactly who takes primacy of the decision-making process. The issue is that there is clinical opinion that sometimes is contrary to command decision.
What I would ask then, don't ask people to make decisions that will be contrary to everything. Just don't send them as the answer, then we don't get into that debate. I think we'll leave it there, actually.
This is the job that we're signed up to do as medics, and that we will do our job to the very best of our ability.
Wherever possible, wherever feasible, you have to listen to your own conscience. Your conscience should be governed by principles of ethics.
The decision to bring the child to a hospital was clearly the right one because of what we could do. So the decision in the air was made to bring it to a facility that we knew that we could actually do something with. What we have to be careful of when we send our people out is not ask them to play God. They're there and know that there is a chance of survival for this individual if they go right rather than left. And anyone who's a medical professional is going to go on the right route.
For a few moments, I thought I was going to be having an interview without coffee with Phil Hubbard. But when he saw the results, he very quickly said that you've done absolutely the right thing, Pete, in bringing the patient back here. The modern army or the modern forces aren't yes sir, no sir, 3 bags full sir, and senior officers are allowed occasionally to have differences in opinion. I resolved to take the patient to Camp Bastion, working on the premise that it's a lot easier to gain forgiveness than it is to gain permission in the first place.
We've looked round the back.
Nurse McIntyre is also hoping to earn forgiveness as she continues to hunt for her one-legged patient, Z. And the doctors and nurses on board the air ambulance are in for a big surprise as they get a casualty they didn't expect.
He's a fighter. He's fighting.
I find it a bit bizarre as he's just been taken off the front line shooting at our troops.
In southern Afghanistan, Britain's military air ambulance has again been ordered to risk a landing on the front line.
Roger. Friendly's right 2 o'clock.
To pick up a badly wounded soldier, it's the only way of saving his life. But this casualty isn't British or even Allied. He's a suspected Taliban insurgent.
Coming up the ramp now. He's a fighter. He's fighting.
Yeah.
Not for long.
Just in case he is the enemy, he's been blindfolded. But the man will still receive the very best care the British medics can give.
Gunshot wound right calf, right elbow, lower back.
In war, everyone has the right to medical treatment.
Okay, now look to be everybody. Roger. Take it, you're back in.
But the crew aren't taking chances. Bitter experience has taught them to search possible Taliban patients.
I don't know.
At Camp Bastion, Nurse McIntyre is still searching for her missing patient, the teenager Z, who had his right leg amputated.
He's not round the back. We've looked round the back. He was sat there.
He's nowhere inside, so there's only one other place. A hospital extension is being built.
Patient.
Z's great escape is over.
What are you doing?
He's got to leave. His bed is needed for more seriously injured patients.
No, you must come back. This is because he doesn't want to leave. No.
I've got him.
Sign up for sack race.
He was in the middle of the building site. I just didn't know where he'd gone, what had happened to him. Obviously because he's got one leg and he's not been up mobilising before. So I was worried that he'd hurt himself. Don't laugh. But at least he's found and he's safe.
The air ambulance is also safe, back from the front line. But the suspected Taliban fighter is in a bad way and in desperate need of an operation. He's still bleeding heavily.
He's in the ambulance. All our guys are back on board, just waiting for the door to be closed.
When an enemy patient comes to Bastion, the guns come out. Lives are at risk.
It is protocol, he's prisoner of war, so we're just making sure we've got no sharp instruments left lying around. Don't give him anything that's going to endanger any member of our staff.
The wounded man will also continue to wear a blindfold, so he can't recognise anyone in the hospital. For the NHS doctors and nurses, this is a new experience.
First one that I've seen come into the establishment that has had a blindfold on.
Radial pulse okay, everyone happy with that?
It doesn't take long to confirm that the man's not going to die or lose a limb. But he does need urgent surgery to stop the bleeding. And he's become a focus of attention.
We keep hearing about the enemy forces, we never actually see any of them. And you know, if you've actually got a definite confirmed on him, you just want to have a look and see if he's any different. Of course they're not, they're just blokes.
I bear no grudge or malice to anybody personally who takes up arms as a Taliban insurgent, because fundamentally we're not actually that dissimilar.
As the fighter recovers from his surgery, under guard, in case he tries to make a run for it, the staff continue to worry about their safety.
He's not got such extensive injuries that he couldn't heave himself out of bed and make a runner and try and harm somebody if he wanted to.
I find it harder for myself to go in and treat him as normal. One of the nurses went in and was giving him sweets and that, which I find a bit bizarre, as he's just been taken off the front line shooting at our troops.
But for many of the nurses, he's a sick patient like any other.
I find it difficult for people treating people differently. That they are injured, they are hurt, they still need to be looked after.
Looking after them means communication, and there's only one way of doing that. In disguise, because the hospital interpreter would become a Taliban target if recognized.
If they catch me, if they recognize me, I'm working with the British, they will kill me.
The dark glasses don't make the interpreter any less nervous. The suspected insurgent will be gone soon. As will Private Hughes, the British soldier who had his ankle fractured by a Taliban landmine.
I mean, it's not every day you survive a landmine. I was talking to my mate, the explosion went off. I went, ah! By the time I turned back to see if my mates were alright, they were already out, pulling me out. And I'm not a religious man as such, but when I got in that vehicle...
Yeah, see, this is the sort of place where you discover God. I did the last time I was here. There must be
someone was looking over me yesterday.
Right, I'm going to step back to work.
No problem, sir.
Cheers.
Someone's also been looking over Z, Nurse McIntyre's one-legged escapee. He's back and in need of more treatment.
In bed number 12 there's Mohammed Z. He's transferred to ICRC after absconding from here. Remember the one?
Oh my God, really?
I don't know how he ended up coming back here. His wound wasn't actually closed. Just to say, keep an eye on him, because he's up and about in the wheelchair and very nifty in the wheelchair. Okay? Just he
smirked at me as he was
wheeled
on the ward.
Z got back to Bastion by hitching a ride in the air ambulance, but no one knows how he managed it.
I didn't even twig in the first place until I actually saw him turn up on the ward. But I've been told basically he'd gone to the International Red Cross hospital in Kath, and apparently he self-discharged almost immediately from there. He then went to Goresh, who unfortunately wouldn't take him, and then was picked up by the MERT team and brought back here.
Z will get his wound restitched, but when that's done, he will have to leave, never to return. While Z gets patched up, Private Hughes is after a little bargain to take home to his mates in the UK.
What have you got? How much is the Scorpion one?
Every time I'm selling for 27, but for you 20.
How much? 20?
For you.
Give it 20 anyway. You won't get one of them back in Blighty, you know what I mean?
Okay.
Is that the Padres vehicle? I'd give him a right arm as a kid to drive one of these. I mean, it's an awesome Tonka toy, isn't it?
Dr. Pete Davis is also going home. The lives he's saved have won him many friends.
Cheers! See you soon, probably. I want to thank you all for looking after me. I want to thank you all for all your hard work. We've seen an awful lot of sort of human tragedy and carnage and all the rest of it, but sort of in between, you know, the spirits come right up and everybody has a good laugh, and you never know, I might even be back out sooner rather than later, the way things go.
One thing is certain, Dr. Davis will be back with the NHS in Scotland within a very short time.
A few days at home just to get used to being at home, and more importantly, let home get used to me being back with them as well.
During their 3 months in Afghanistan, the 100 volunteers from the National Health Service who helped run Camp Bastion's hospital and its air ambulance took part in almost 1,000 medical emergencies. They were involved in more than 200 major operations, undertook 17 amputations, and they believe they saved the lives of countless people, many of them children.
Sometimes the work has been really demanding. Long hours, intricate work, and some struggles to save life. You know, battles that we've won. we lose a few, but in the main we win most of them.
For a small number of patients, it absolutely makes the difference between life and death. In my opinion, it's definitely worth the risk, and I'm not on a medal hunting mission by any stretch of the imagination.
Before I went out there, I'd never retreated patients with, victims of bomb blasts and things like that. But now I can say to myself, well, yeah, I've done all that.
Not many people get the opportunity to do it. And I feel quite privileged that I do have the opportunity to do it, and I found out I'm quite good at it.
It's certainly, what I'm doing now at the moment is less stressful than being an NHS doctor.
I do it fundamentally because I think that we, the United Kingdom, have a responsibility to our soldiers. Each time they leave the camp, not knowing whether that's the day that a roadside bomb is going to go off or they're going to get shot. If we're going to send them to these places, they need to be looked after.